Hello and welcome everyone to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm here with another special guest, Craig Mullins. Craig has joined us to share his vast knowledge and expertise with all of us. He is an independent consultant specializing in database administration, database management, and IBM Z mainframe. Craig also contributes regularly as a columnist for database trends and application with his monthly DBA column and maintains two active blogs as well. If I talk more about Craig, then he is an IBM Gold consultant and an IBM champion for data and AI. He has been named one of the top 200 thought leaders in big data analytics with Analytics Week. So in this session, we are going to learn more things about from him, from his experience. But before we start the discussion, I would like to thank Craig for joining us today. And now I request you to please tell us something about yourself.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an independent consultant, and I've worked with DB2 on the mainframe since version 1. So that kind of can show you the gray in my beard. I've earned it, right? And I've used DB2 as both a programmer and a DBA. I've worked at software shops like BMC Software and Platinum Technology before it was acquired by CA. Worked as an analyst at Gartner Group, and now I'm an independent consultant and get to see a lot of different sites and how they use DB2 and give them guidance on best ways to get it to perform and do what they want it to do.
Okay. Thank you so much, Craig, for telling us about yourself. And now we would love to hear more about your journey. So can you share like your journey in how you start your journey into this particular field, database administration and data management, and what exactly inspired you to specialize in DB2 related things for ZOS and IBM Z mainframe?
Sure. Yeah, we have to go way back to even before my college days. I'm an avid collector of records and CDs. Back then, only records. CDs weren't out yet. But I had a DBase 2 database on my personal computer way back in the day, and was intrigued by all the capabilities that gave me for being able to manage my collection. So as I progressed through education, my senior year in high school, we actually had a DEC 10 computer, and I got the opportunity to use that and thought that computer science is the way to go. And when I went to the University of Pittsburgh, I majored in computer science and focused a lot on data and database related classes, so that when I had an opportunity in the actual business world, my first job was actually as an intern at US Steel, and had the opportunity to learn IMS first as a developer. And once I graduated, I got the full-time job at US Steel, eventually moved to Mellon Bank. At Mellon Bank, I just determined my role was to become a DBA. So what I did was, anytime the DBA group had any type of opportunity to learn, any type of opportunity to interact with them, I took it. I'm a big advocate of prepare for the job you want while doing the job you have. The other thing I did was, at the time, there was a brand new magazine called Database Programming and Design that came out. I made sure I subscribed to that, had it sitting on my desk. So whenever the DBAs came by, they'd say, hey, this kid likes database systems. So as soon as there was an opening on the DBA team, I applied for it and got it. Learned DBA as an IMS DBA, and eventually had the opportunity to take over DB2 when the person who was doing DB2 moved on to a different job. The other IMS DBAs, Mellon was much more IMS at the time, as most shops were. DB2 was version 1 at that time. And I decided, I'm interested in this. And none of the other DBAs were, so I jumped at it, and I've never looked back from there.
Okay, so you have worked as both profile, like you have worked as a developer as well as DBA. So that's a really very inspiring thing, because usually what we see, some people work for a particularly DBA part, some work as a developer, but you have knowledge in both the areas. So I think that also helps you to grow in this particular field, I guess, right?
I completely agree. In my experience, the best DBAs were developers. That gives them a better opportunity to interact with the developers and to contribute as a team. There's unfortunately in the industry, there's this kind of DBAs versus
Yes.
developers mentality. They can develop, and I'm more of a DBAs and developers as a team,
Correct.
not as combat. So going up through the developer area, the DBA understands the requirements and needs of developers and can work with them better.
Yes, I completely agree with this point. Like, there is no competition between developers and DBA. We all are here to work together to make the things easier for us. So, yes, I agree with this thought. Okay, and here, like, I would like to talk bit about your like your books. Like, as we all know that you have authored various books. So, what inspired you to author multiple books and technical articles on database management and IT? And how do you like particularly choose the topic? Like, yes, this is the topic which you want to share with your audience. So, what exactly inspired you for this?
Sure. The first book I wrote, DB2 Developer's Guide, uh, was inspired because I was a DBA. I started writing that way back when I was at Mellon Bank in the early 90s. And what inspired it was I couldn't find any books on the market that sort of had everything I wanted in one place.
Okay.
I could find some books on SQL. I could find some books on some parts of administration. And you go back that far, the manuals uh, weren't as well written as they are today. I mean, IBM's put a lot of effort into their manuals, and they're a lot better than they used to be. They used to be somewhat clunky. On top of that, this is the days when manuals were printed, and there was one, maybe two sets of manuals in the entire shop. So there were no PDFs. And when you'd go from one version to another, version 1.2 to 1.3, you'd fight over the old manuals because the DBAs would take the manuals home, and that way, if they got called at 2 in the morning, they didn't have to drive into the office to look at the manual. They'd actually have the manual with them. So some of those old type of issues
Yes.
drove the writing of that book. What I think, though, that caused it to be the bestseller that it became was that it was written sort of uh, not in the very technical manual style, but in a relatable way. As I'm a DBA, I'm looking for this particular information. Let's talk about it in a way that a DBA would talk about it. Coming from my background, that's I think made a lot of sense there. And there were sections of it geared towards developers as well. So I always tried to write understanding who the audience is, as opposed to let's try and dump everything that I know into one book. And I think that helped it to become popular. Uh, Other things that I wrote about were really driven by the same force. In other words, what am I looking for that I can't find? What am I hearing from people that they can't find? And let's see if I can do something to serve that market. So the second book I wrote was on database administration. What does it mean to be a DBA? Other books I've written on performance, on DB2 from a application development perspective, and then on IBM mainframe specialty processors. These are things where you don't really see a lot of competitive books in the marketplace focusing on those topics. So I try to pick things like that. One other thing I'd mention is I always enjoyed writing, even before I became enamored with computers. I liked sitting down and writing, and someday hopefully I after I retire, I'm thinking about writing some kind of a novel, a technology type novel, but still a novel. And, we'll see where we go with that. But I find that a lot of folks in IT, in technology, have an aversion to writing. It's like, I'd rather not write, just write a quick email. I don't want to write anything more. But it's really important for a lot of reasons to be able to communicate effectively in writing,
Yes.
one of them being documentation. If you're not documenting your systems, you've got a lot of problems. So lots of reasons to learn how to write. I'm not saying you should write a 1,600-page book like I did, but learn how to write a little bit, and it can bolster your career.
Yes, completely agree. Like even what I believe, like if we have not documented anything, it means we have not done anything. Because if you are learning any process, so you should at least have something for your own reference that yes, this is the thing that we can refer whenever it is needed. We have applications like Chat GPT, we have other thing that can help us, but still something should be there which we have prepared by our own. So that will for sure give a beneficial for other as well, like when you share it with others, they can learn a lot from it.
Very, very true. One other thing I'd add there with documentation, as a consultant, I
Mhm.
rely on that. And sometimes, there's a site I've been at, I've been asking for some documentation on why they aren't running run stats on certain table spaces. And I hear this from some of the people who've been there a while that, oh, well, at one point in time, we went in and we changed these things manually because we're having all kinds of problems. And there's a document that explains which table spaces it is and why we did this. 9 months later, they haven't found the document.
Okay.
So documentation, important, but where it is, document where the documentation is, please, or you'll lose that knowledge.
Yes, that is our responsibility, like we have to take care of that thing also, like where exactly it is located. Otherwise everything will go in a bin. Yeah.
True.
And Craig, like as you mentioned also that one of your book, which is a DB2 Developer Guide, has been one of the best seller over the 20 years across 6 editions. So, what do you believe has contributed to its long-lasting success, and how has it evolved over the years? Like one thing, few things you have already mentioned, but what other thing you think that yes, these are the things that is helping everyone to understand that book, and that's why they are that is the most selling book of DB2.
Well, I think the first thing is something that I already mentioned briefly, which is that it's kind of a concise guide with
Princess Guide.
just about everything you need in one place. It is useful for developers and it's useful for DBAs. So kind of across the board information in there. The other thing that was important was keeping it up to date. Making sure that the latest versions of DB2 were covered in it. Unfortunately, the current edition only goes through version 10, and we're up to version 13 now. And the issue with that is, book publishers just aren't as interested in publishing the same number of books that they used to be. So it's can't get a publisher interested in coming out with a new version of it. So
Okay.
if anyone out there listening to this wants a new version of this, talk to IBM Press, Pearson, the publishers of it, and say, hey, we'd like a new version of it. I'm more than willing to write it. I just need someone to publish it.
Okay. Yes. All right. So, like we saw that, and we have witnessed that you have authored various books. So here I would like to ask you one question. Like, did you face any kind of challenges while translating those complex technical knowledge into the written form and to make it more accessible for a broader audience? So, what kind of challenges did you face, and how you tackle those challenges?
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the challenges, as I mentioned, the IBM manuals are getting better, and there's a lot more documentation out there across the web than there used to be when I first started writing. So one of the challenges is to try and do things in a different way than what other people are doing, either in blogs or in manuals or in other books, trying to give it that technician's focus without the technician's way of writing. And by that, I mean making it accessible.
Okay.
And that can take a little bit of time. Sometimes if you just wind up trying to write, well, this function does this, you're going to wind up writing almost what's in the manuals. And I definitely want to avoid that. So instead of it does this, it's here's a use case, here's something where this particular feature can help you do X, Y, or Z. Translating it away from a rote manual into a here's the benefit that you can achieve from this feature if you implement it in this way. Hopefully I've achieved that.
Yes. Yeah, so I believe like this is the one of the best way to write anything, because as you mentioned that when we are just writing the technical things, that then it will work same as a manual. But when we are providing all those necessary things like use cases, benefits, advantages, drawbacks, so these things will for sure help us to understand the topic in a more clarity, with a more clarity. Okay. So here now I talk. I would like to talk bit about your specialty. So as a specialist in DB2 for ZOS, what are critical factors to be considered? What you think, like what are the critical factors to be considered for a successful database management on this platform?
Okay. Well, I'd say, first of all, succeeding with DB2 for ZOS,
Mhm.
I don't think is considerably different than succeeding with Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle or any other DBMS that you might want to think of. It's a lot of similar type of things that you have to keep in mind. Number one is understand your role. What is your role? Are you a developer? Are you a DBA? Are you a system programmer, a sysadmin, an end user? And then focus on the things that increase your viability in that role with DB2. If you're a developer, it's SQL. If you're a DBA, one of the things I like to do with DBAs is, give you a quick way of, what is DBA? And I say it's keeping your systems up to par, PAR, where PAR is an acronym that means performance, administration, and recovery. And, simplify in on those types of things, work on focusing on those types of things to succeed in your role. Second, I'd say automate as much as possible. Use tools to help you automate, C lists and recs to help you automate. Anything you can do with automation will help you improve your processes. You'll reduce the amount of time, effort, and human error that's involved in managing those systems. And that's, kind of what we're striving for. I'd also say, implement comprehensive monitoring, understand what the things are that you need to be focused on, and have your monitors, when those thresholds get tripped, alert you so that you're not having to be reactive, you're being proactive, understanding it before it happens and coming and finding that information. Know your platform, IBM Z, ZOS. A lot of times developers, at least in this day and age, they have their IDE. The only time they interoperate with the mainframe is, they have to log in through the IDE, but they're not in ISPF. They are not using Zoe or something like that even to integrate and understand the mainframe. So understand that platform a little bit more,
Yes.
so that you become one with the platform, kind of a Zen type thing. And finally, I'd say always be learning. Whether it's about DB2, whether it's about the platform, whether it's about your programming language of choice. I mean, DB2 itself is always changing. There's always new things coming in with new function levels. Moving from version 12 to version 13, lots of new things coming in. And if you don't use those new features as they come in, sometimes we forget they're even there, and things that you could be doing to improve your processes, you're not doing because you haven't constantly been learning about them.
Yes. Okay. All right. And now we will talk bit about your database design. So with your expertise in database design, what are some foundational principle you emphasize when teaching others how to design the efficient as well as scalable databases?
Okay. The first thing I'd say is it's not a technical thing. It's a business thing. It's understand the data and understand the usage patterns that are there for that data. You have to start with a clear understanding of the data and the relationships between the data. And by that, I don't mean, just jumping into an ER diagram. Yeah, ER diagrams are useful, and at some point you need to be doing them and creating them, but really immersing yourself in the data with the subject matter experts to understand and define what all these data elements are. I know this may seem like simplistic, but a lot of times people, just jump to a database without really figuring out what all these data elements are. And then somewhere down the line, they run into governance and compliance issues.
Yes.
And how can you be in compliance with regulations if you don't even know the definitions of the data that are in your systems? So you have to really start at that foundational level, and you have to normalize. You can't talk about database design without saying normalize your data. We're optimizing the integrity of the data. We can worry about performance later, and we do that with workload analysis. You analyze the type of workload that's going to run against this database, understand the programming requirements. You're not going to have the programs yet, you're just building the database, but you're going to have some idea of the processes that are going to be run against it so that we can then build the database to appropriately deliver the performance required using things like, what are the concurrency requirements? What are the read write patterns? What are the types of operations that are being written against this database? Then understand the growth patterns. How's the data going to grow? When we implement a database, right now it's here's the size we want, but over time it's obviously going to grow, and if it's going to grow by 10% versus by 150%, there are different requirements in terms of how that thing needs to scale and grow. So things like, is it going to be scaling out with horizontal scalability? It's going to be scaling up with vertical scalability. Building these things into the design, and then making sure that the DBMS we choose, I'm a DB2 for ZOS bigot, and I think it can do just about anything, but there may be some use cases where the scalability requirements are such that you want to have the cloud-based database as a service that can scale real efficiently, real quickly, and you're going to have some ways to implement that. So not everything has to be in DB2 for ZOS, just most everything. And of course, there's a lot more to it. You need to align the database with your business goals and so on. So, that's a kind of a high level nugget of how I'd tell people to approach it.
Thank you so much, Craig, for such a detailed explanation. Like, I think now it is quite clear to all those like who wanted to make their career as a database administrator or DB or mainframe related thing. They can learn a lot from this impactful description, I would say. And now I would like to talk a bit more about your profile as a blogger. So, as a columnist and blogger, you frequently share insights about the industry. So, what emerging trends in data management as well as database or optimization do you found most exciting as well as challenging?
Certainly. I think, right now it's all about AI.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of exciting in terms of what AI can introduce into the world of database systems. You look at some of the things that DB2 is introducing with SQL data insights, and your ability to query using AI and machine learning capabilities in ways that you couldn't without being able to build the patterns on the data using SQL data insights. But moreover, you see things like at the system level, how can the optimizer use things like machine learning and AI to generate access paths that are customized to your particular environment. So how can the optimizer learn your usage patterns through machine learning and then have this integrated into the optimization code such that when you run a query at your site, a similar query at a different site may have a completely different access path than at your site because you're both using it differently. And I think that's, really exciting. On top of that, there's all kinds of other things that we can do in terms of, how we use AI and machine learning on top of our data and database systems. And I think that's really what's, driving a lot of the hype in the industry these days. And, IBM's right there with it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. And now, like being named one of the top 200 thought leaders in big data analytics, and what role do you see the big data playing in the upcoming days for the mainframe computing?
Sure. First, I'd say big data isn't really the industry meme that it used to be, 10, 15 years ago. But that doesn't mean it's not existing, that it's not the same as it was 10, 15 years ago. The volume of data isn't going down. The variety of data isn't diminishing. The velocity at which we're creating and accessing data isn't changing. Big data still exists. And DB2 is right there in terms of enabling us to take advantage of all those patterns in big data. You look at things like the table spaces, where you have relative page numbering. I'm sorry, I got to look at some notes here to get the exact number here. With universal table spaces, with partition by range, relative page numbering, you can store up to 4 petabytes of data in one table. That's 4,096 terabytes of data. Anyone thinking that's not big data, I mean, that's big. DB2 can handle it today and for a number of releases now. On top of that, things like IDAA, the DB2 Analytics Accelerator, integrated right with DB2, complex analytical queries on top of your big data tables, running optimized through DB2 without having to move the data anywhere, going to IDAA, and at times running 1,000 times faster than what is running on the core engine of DB2. Things like time travel queries on your history tables. A lot of times for analytics with big data, we're interested in, well, what was going on exactly a year ago, 5 years ago, a month ago, with time travel queries in DB2 that's built right into the system. And things like compression, both of data and indexes, built right into DB2. When you're using vast, tremendous amounts of data, compressing the data becomes an important thing to consider. One last thing, I would say that when you are an organization running a mainframe with DB2, it is the driver of the creation of data at your organization. Your transactions are accessing it. All of your most important systems are going into DB2. And as that data gets created, that is what's driving the big data creation at these organizations. So it's not just for being able to access it, it's being drivers of the creation of the big data at large organizations, at least the big data in terms of what drives businesses.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, like we have discussed various things technical. Now I would like to ask last question, and it is related to your hobbies. Like what are your hobbies and how you spend your time in your day off time or your
Sure.
free time?
Yeah, I think I kind of hinted at one of my hobbies with the first question about collecting records and CDs. I've been doing that my whole life, and I can tell you exactly how many I have now because I keep them in a database. I've got over 16,000
Okay.
records and CDs. So I listen to music, I collect them, I file them. That's big thing. I also am an avid reader. I've got a whole library of technical books here in my office. I can't really see them or point them to you. I've got other novels. We converted our dining room into a library. So instead of having a dining room that we really weren't using, we've got a library that I use all the time. I've also enjoy trying to keep fit. So walking the dog, going out for a swim, got a pool in the backyard. So I try to get a swim in at least once or twice a day if I can. And on top of that, keeping the honey-do list up for the things my wife gives me, I guess, would be another thing that I keep doing. So, but I try to keep busy with things, not always only technology things.
So yeah, here we can say that these are the things that keeps you motivated and inspired for doing all those good stuff that you are doing for the society by providing blogs and other technical stuff. So thank you so much for sharing all those information with us.
One more thing I'd like to add.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Football season is starting here in the US. Big football fan, Pittsburgh
Okay.
Steelers fan. Go Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay,
I was
you are
born and raised in Pittsburgh. So even though I live in Texas now, Pittsburgh Steelers come with me wherever I move.
okay. All right. So that is also a part of your hobby that you love to watch football and all. Okay, that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Craig, for joining us in this podcast and for sharing all these detailed explanation for all the topic we discussed. And I'm pretty much sure that it is very beneficial for all those audience who are interested to make their career in DB2 and IBM mainframes. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's been a joy to speak with you and happy to be a part of it.
Thank you.